Eric Dunlap is my name, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Well, you're almost in just total denial to think that a man could have breast cancer. My mother had breast cancer and was diagnosed 4 years prior to my diagnosis. So I was familiar with breast cancer, but just not really familiar with men getting it. The interesting thing I think about the story is how I found the breast cancer. And to find your own cancer is kind of interesting, and I didn't envision that this was going to happen this way. I actually had a spot of blood appear on a shirt. I went to a doctor. He said nothing. He said, you know, basically, you probably had trauma to your chest, and if the blood continues, then we'll do some testing and go from there. Well, it didn't continue. It stopped like a couple days later, so I didn't go back to him because I thought it was over. And actually, a year and a day later, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. And the way it happened this time was a little more dramatic. Well, I was doing such a strenuous workout that I got to a point that I think I completed about 100 push-ups. And so I'm feeling just, you know, great until I felt this horrible pain come in my chest. And I thought I'd pulled a muscle because I probably overextended myself, and the insanity of getting in shape overnight for the next night. But, you know, I'm a guy, we're going to do this. So I tried to get off the ground, and I couldn't. I felt extreme pain in my chest, and it was so excruciating that I couldn't get up, and I called for my wife to come to the basement while I was working out. And when she arrived, she looked at me and she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Honey, every time I try to get up, my chest hurts so badly that I can't make it to my feet." And so she's like, "Well, let me call 911, maybe it's a heart attack." And I said, "Well, honey, I don't think it's a heart attack because I'm breathing fine." So I tried to get to my feet again while she was there, and I winced again. And she said, "You know, what is it?" And I said, "I don't know." So I said, "Well, let me just, you know, be calm and try to stand a third time." And when I tried to stand that time, I felt the pain so hard that I grabbed my chest, and I could feel a lump. And so when I went to the doctor's office, he said, "Well, I'm not sure what this is, but it feels like a mass. I was hoping it was a cyst that we could drain and that'd be the end of it. But because it's a hard area, I'm concerned about this mass and I need to have you see a specialist." And he scheduled time for me to see a surgical oncologist. So when I went to the surgical oncologist, 3 days later, he diagnosed me with stage 2 breast cancer. Actually, he indicated that I had breast cancer, and he was so shocked that at 34 years old, I had breast cancer, never had a cavity, never been hospitalized, never had a broken bone, but I had breast cancer. Because you'd be surprised, once someone says you have cancer, you stop hearing the other words. And your concentration and your focal point is, how do I live? How do I get past it? How much time do I even have to live? Because you don't know the severity of the cancer. There's several phases of treatment once someone's diagnosed with cancer. Sometimes it's strictly chemo, sometimes it's radiation, sometimes it can be a combination of both. There can be surgeries, and in my case, the surgery, initially I had a radical mastectomy. The chemo was for 6 months, and during that time you have probably every emotion going up and down at different times. And that's because the chemo is coming into your body to extract or kill basically the cancerous cells. But the problem is that it doesn't just kill cancerous cells, it kills good active cells as well. What I've learned through this experience is that life is full of challenges, and you never know the size or the type or when the occurrence might be, but that you have to really say, no matter what it is, I'm going to get through it. And I had to look at my kids, and that really gave me a lot of motivation. My youngest was 13 months, and my oldest was 3 years old. And I couldn't envision myself being without them or vice versa. And I said, you know, it's been a blessing to be a dad, just to become a dad. And to look at them, I wanted them to see, no matter what you encounter, that you can get through it. And it's my job to be dad. So I want to be as best suited for it, and I want to make sure that they know that if something happens, they can get through it. And cancer does not have to be a death sentence, but we must attack it early. And that means doing regular checkups, having all the necessary examinations, breast, prostate, colon, All of those need to be reviewed, especially as we age, to ensure that if we do have something, we have a fighting chance. And I never thought I'd say cancer was a blessing, but it was a blessing in disguise. Because then I recaptured what was really important, spending more time with the children, more time with Felicia, my wife, making sure that I spent more time with family and friends. And you know, sometimes you're working so much and everybody's working, everybody has a schedule, but if you forget to spend time with people you care about, how are you showing them that you care about them? And I decided I need to make some changes and I need to do more.